Welcome to the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast powered by Hiscox. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. Throughout my career, I've had side hustles, some of which have turned into real businesses. But first and foremost, I'm a serial technology entrepreneur. In the creator space, we hear plenty of advice on how to hustle harder and why you can sleep when you're dead. On this show, we ask new questions in hopes of getting new answers. Questions like, how can small businesses work smarter? How do you achieve balance between work and family? How can we redefine success in our businesses so that we don't burn out after year 3? Every week, I sit down with business founders at various stages of their side hustle to small business journey. These entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope while keeping their values. Keep listening for conversation, context, and camaraderie. Today's guest is Erica Beth Levin, the founder of Globowl, a baby and toddler food company that strives to introduce young children to a variety of flavors from around the world. Erica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sanjay. I'm very happy to be here.
So I'm excited to have you on as well because honestly, we have very few food entrepreneurs, and I don't know that we've ever had anybody from kind of the child toddler space in food. So I think we're going to get into some really interesting kind of topics and discussion here. But before we do, give us a little bit about your background and what got you to where you are today.
Yes. So thank you again for having me. I am a food entrepreneur, which is not anything I was expecting to be. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, to be honest. But yeah, this is my third startup, but my first in sort of a consumer product. My life, though, has always been in around food. Starting from the very early days of my mom is Italian, my dad's Jewish, and food was a very big part of our lives. So it kind of just was always inherent in me. And by the way, those cultures are just so similar. I mean, it's all surrounded by food, family, love, right? And so that was my parents inspired that in me from the beginning. So yeah, then my first job, I went to Northwestern University and decided to stay in Chicago and started my first company very early. We had no expectation of doing that either. But you know, there's something really good about starting a company very young because you really don't know enough. If you knew enough, you wouldn't do it. And you also you don't have a lot to lose at that point. So At that point in my career and my life, you know, I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a family, you know. So it was a very good time to start that. But I got the bug and I loved it. And I built a company from nothing. And it became the largest online magazine for women in Chicago. It was very well read. But we covered a lot of food, restaurants, you know, what to do, where to go, and brought this community of women together. And that led me to my second company where I was a founding employee. So I think one of the first 10. And I launched the Chicago office and the whole app and everything for a company called Reserve, which was a restaurant technology app. So again, in the food space. And that actually sold to Resi, and Resi sold to Amex. So it was an interesting experience to be part of a venture-backed business like that. And then here I am, the third, which I said I wasn't going to do unless I was like very much called to do something again. And I couldn't say no when this idea popped into my head during COVID, when, you know, we couldn't leave the house, let alone, you know, travel, right? And my daughter was starting to eat solid foods, and I wanted a way to bring the world to her so that she would enjoy it, become less picky, you know, be a more adventurous person and eater. And that was the impetus. And then I went down a rabbit hole of research and just realized there was nothing like it. And that kids all over the world just eat what their parents are eating. And they're not picky eating kids with food allergies. And we have a big problem here in the US. So I got right to it. And here we are. It's been about 4 years.
Yeah, it's funny, this kind of journey that you talk about here, because I think this is true of a lot of us, especially those of us that start young. We become accidental entrepreneurs and then end up falling into it and loving it. And then it just gets into us. And I'm actually not very surprised at all that you're doing a third one. And I know there's probably going to be a fourth and fifth one, even though you're going to be saying like, never again, this is going to be the last one. And that's just not how we work, right?
I know.
We can't help ourselves when we see these problems. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about this latest business then.
Yes.
And what problem did you see and how did you kind of decide to go all in and do this?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I saw a total lack of sort of innovation in the baby food space. Everything that I saw, I homemade all of my food for both of my kids. And one of the reasons was because I couldn't find anything that I really wanted to feed them, right? Everything is served as like mushy, bland purees in single-use plastic pouches. I mean, that is really what you look at when you look at the baby food aisle. And I know that kids can have flavor, they can have spice, not spicy, right? But they can have spice. They can all have all of these things. And my pediatrician had told me, she's Indian. She goes, I grew up eating all of the spice, all of the Indian food, all the curries. And, that's what I'm doing with my kids. And she's a doctor, so I should listen to her. Well, I didn't listen to her with my son, and he is a very picky eater. And I said, I'm just not doing that again with my daughter. And so I started feeding her what we were eating. And one of that, her first meal was coconut curry with shrimp, which is just crazy. But then I'm thinking, but I want to introduce the allergens, right? So that's kind of how it started. There was nothing on the shelf that introduced allergens, introduced flavor, not to mention texture. Kids should not be drinking their food, out of a pouch. They should be learning to chew it. So these pouches have actually caused a lot of problems. They've caused, obviously picky eating, but texture aversions. They're sterilized of all allergens. So, kids in America have been having this, it's an epidemic, like the food allergy situation. And kids aren't learning how to chew properly. Even dentists say they've never seen so many cavities in kids under 1 since the pouches, because the contents of the pouch kind of sit on these kids' teeth. So there's a lot, speech is, can be delayed. There's a lot. So, so here we are. I just basically am doing what the rest of the world does and putting it in a jar, right? A glass jar that's clean and plastic free and kind of doing what everyone else does except here.
Yeah. I mean, that is so interesting. And it's funny too, because my wife and you would probably get along, because she did a very similar thing where she made stuff at home because of concerns about all the preservatives and all of this kind of stuff that is in this food. And it's like, well, the food that, we eat as adults, like we can eat whole foods and, we get the vegetables from the store and everything. So she would make stuff at home as well. So it's interesting. And I think you're at this kind of interesting intersection, because the reason why a lot of these things are done is because of convenience, right? Because our lives are so busy. And so we're just trying to make parents' lives easier by giving them an easy way to feed their kids. And so you're taking a very different approach to that. So talk to me a little bit about, why do you think that didn't exist from other players in the market, and it took somebody like you to come in to solve that problem?
I wish I had the answer to that. The American Academy of Pediatrics did come out with a recommendation to not give your kids allergens. Okay, this was a very long time ago. Right. And I think at that point, they had to make changes, right? So everything became just very sterilized, very sanitized. I think the pouches were absolutely made for convenience. And I understand that, as a busy mom, a working mom, I like being able to throw something in my bag. So what I was able to do with this food, because we use all natural ingredients, it's all organic. I mean, we use everything from, tamarind to basil. So I never thought we could make it shelf stable, because but I was adamant about that. I need it to be shelf stable for the convenience factor, but I will not add anything unnatural, any preservatives, nothing artificial. So we were actually able to get them to be shelf stable with natural preservatives, acids and things like that. And of course, the process of cooking and heating it. And so I do think it still has the same convenience. It's just much better for you. It's nutrient dense. These are full meals, not 6 apples pureed into a pouch. They are, they're textured, and kids are learning how to chew, right? They're learning those important oral motor skills. They're getting their allergen introduction in, and we know that they're not consuming microplastics. So as long as we had the convenience, I knew everything else would resonate as long as that convenience was there. Yeah. And so that's kind of how it went. And it's funny because the original, the stalwart, the OG of baby food is Gerber, right? And that's actually in glass jars. They're the only ones that have really maintained that, which I find funny, because every new brand, especially knowing all we know about plastics and not only the environment, but the consumption of them. I'm quite shocked, how much of baby foods, over 70%, is in plastic pouches.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. Okay, let's talk about the business itself. So, you went from doing a magazine, which is a very different business than doing a food business. So how did you get this up off the ground? Like, you decided you wanted to do this. Like, how did you get going to figure out how to build this and make this and ship it and sell it and all of the things that go into it?
It is the hardest thing I've ever done by far.
Yeah.
Like starting a business at 24 with zero experience, no money or anything was easier than this because this relies on a supply chain, right? It's not a tech situation where I could just build a website on Squarespace. Although at the time Squarespace wasn't around. We had a custom design in WordPress, I think. Starting a product company, a consumer packaged good of any kind relies on more than yourself, right? And I'm not really accustomed to that with my first business. I could do everything on the back end for the most part. Of course, we brought in contractors, but I need a manufacturer, which is a coup in and of itself because no one wants to take a chance on a brand new brand. We don't hit the minimum order quantities. Like it's a whole thing. Plus, every co-manufacturing facility is able to do different things. And we have a lot of requirements because we have allergens in our food. We are in glass. They have to have a certain filler, right? So it's like the whole thing. So finding a manufacturer, sourcing material, glass. And we had to source glass during COVID, which is actually, if you're not in the business, you wouldn't know, but glass was very hard to find, like martini glasses. Restaurants couldn't get wine glasses, martini glasses, like, because I have a lot of friends in that space. And they're like, you're going to do glass? We can't even get glass for the bar. But managed to make that work, and then you have to rely on others to help develop the recipes so that they, in fact, can be, sold, right? So it's not just me cooking in my kitchen and putting them in, right? There's certain things that have to be done to ensure that the food tastes good and can be preserved, right? In a natural way. So yeah, very, very hard. I mean, to answer the question of what did I do? I mean, I just did a lot of research. This is pre-ChatGPT. I wish I had ChatGPT now, but did a ton of research, and then I started kind of involving myself in all of these communities online, that talked about CPG and other founders that are doing it. People gave me time, and I always try to give back and give time when people want to talk to me. But, people that have done it gave me a lot of time and really, really helped me kind of get things off the ground. And I have a very strong advisory board, very strong, like from the head of Gerber North America to the founder of Halo Top Ice Cream. So I really have been able to use sort of the last 20 years of my career to meet people that are in this space.
Yeah. Was there anything that made you nervous about going down this path and trying to start this company?
Everything.
How did you get over that?
Well, I talked to lawyers, right? Because that was the number one thing. This is baby food, right? My number one concern is the health and safety of these babies and these children. So that was definitely a concern. But why should I not do it when I know I'm putting the healthiest option out there when everyone else is, right? Everyone else is doing it, or everyone else that has, a brand has figured out how to do it. So getting advice on that front. But yeah, the whole thing made me nervous. It's also a very cash intensive business. You need a lot of capital up front. That's terrifying when you have 2 kids and a home and, and during COVID, job security was really, not there so much. So this was really scary. So there was a lot of nerves about it all. But again, I knew it had to be done. And so here we are. But
how much funding did it take to get this kicked off? And where did you find that money? Was it your own? Was it outside?
Yeah, some of it was definitely my own. My husband reminds us of that. But, that's how much we believed in it, though. I've never actually invested my own money in a business. So this was a big thing for us. I raised about $600K to get things off the ground, and that lasted quite a few years. I've now raised in total $1 million, but it's crazy. Like launching a CPG company with under $1 million is some sort of extra crazy because you need so much capital up front to have inventory. But to answer the question about how did I raise it or where, again, third startup. So I do have a lot of kind of, network or connections in that space. So it was a lot of angel investors in my, hometown community where I built my first 2 businesses. So angels and friends and family. And that's how we did it. Oh, I also went through the Techstars Accelerator, and they invest money and obviously time in you.
Right.
But no one understood why I was applying for Techstars after my third company. I'm like, because this is the company I was meant to build. And I want to go back to the fundamentals, right? Like the way I built a business plan in 2008 is very different than building a business plan, or now it's like 10 slides, right? I mean, you have to have everything to back it up, but it's very different. And so I wanted to make sure I was prepared and that I had a foundation to start this and do it right from the beginning.
So that's so interesting to me because first of all, Techstars, A lot of the businesses that go through that are tech-oriented, software as a service businesses. The fact that you're a CPG, was this a Techstars version that was just for CPG or?
It's not at all. And
Interesting.
I had a friend go through the program and I go, I didn't know they did CPG. And then, I reached out to the Chicago Techstars and I said, can a CPG company apply? My friend did it. And they said, we don't invest in just tech companies. We invest in companies that we think are going to give us a return, So if that's what you have, then sure, we'll put in, the money and the time.
Yeah.
But yes, it is primarily tech. They do have I think they have a food and ag version of one, and they have remote versions and stuff like that. But I went through the Chicago one because that's my startup home, and it was wonderful. It was a great experience, and I really did get back to the basics. And I implemented that, plus all the mistakes I learned the first, couple times. And I've made a lot less mistakes, but I've made different kinds of mistakes. Like CPG is its own beast, right? So there's certain things you can't really be prepared for. So I'm definitely learning a new set of skills and getting to use these mistakes and what I learned, I guess, in the future. But they've been less than in the past.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So, I mean, I think all of us as entrepreneurs, that's basically the journey that we're always on, right? You're always going to be making mistakes. Right. The goal is just not to make the same mistake twice. Over and over. Not over and over again, either in the same business or in different businesses. So looking back on kind of this kind of history with Globowl, is there anything that you look back and be like, oh, now that I know what I know, I would have done this piece differently and it would have changed the trajectory in this way?
Yeah. I mean, we're still I said I've been working on it for 4 years, but we've only been selling in store for a year and a half. So I only have really 1 full year of data under our belts in terms of our selling story and our velocities and things like that. But I can say, yes, I could still say, even leading up to selling into retail, that there are things that could have been done differently, right? The initial investment in inventory, right? Actually producing the product probably could have been less. I think what we did was we did more inventory than we needed from the very beginning, where we could have done smaller runs, right? Which would have helped because there is a shelf life on the products, right? So the longer they sit there, the closer they get to expiration. So there's really no reason to hold on to all of a ton of inventory. If you have a quick sort of production schedule with your co-man, or even if you do it yourself, then you can pick and choose when you do it. But, let's just say it's a 2-week lead time to get a production on the calendar. Great. You don't need to do 200,000 jars at the very beginning, do 50,000 at a time, stuff like that. But the biggest lesson I learned from, I would say, my first company, and what I now will, implement forever, is I know you said you're running your business with a partner, but I had a very bad partner experience. And so on my first time around, stole a lot of money. There was no trust, it was a very hard situation. And it just told me that you don't go into business with someone else if you don't know them well. And there's no trust. And unfortunately, I didn't trust my gut. I knew this person pretty short amount of time. And my gut told me something was off and I didn't listen. And it really made for a very stressful 8 years. And even though I have a different kind of stress in this company, I'm intrinsically a happy person doing this, and I look back and I realize I wasn't, at that time. So, just listen to your gut. I think that's an ongoing mistake that a lot of people make. And at this stage of my life, I don't ignore it anymore.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 groups that are very important, right? It's co-founders that are going in with you. Yes. And if you're taking investors, that's the other group.
Yes.
You've got to be really sure about both of those 2.
Yes.
And I think I've seen this time and time again where people don't trust their gut. And I'm guilty of the same mistake as well. I've had co-founders as well as investors that I've known that have not been good and then have definitely turned out to be not good. Yep. And I could have saved myself a lot of pain on the front end. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I'm really proud of. I have turned down investment money, which I have also never done in my life. But if I felt that feeling, I'm like, no, it's too long-term of a relationship. There's too much at stake. I'm not doing it. And so I actually turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars because I wasn't prepared to make that commitment. So I agree. Listen to your gut, listen to your own morals, your own compass, and, make those decisions from the gut.
Well, and also one piece of advice I always give other entrepreneurs is ask around to other entrepreneurs who have taken money from some of these investors. I mean, there are investors that I have had in the past that I would rather shut down and burn down my company than take their money ever again.
Me too.
And I freely give that advice to other entrepreneurs if they're asking me about those people.
Oh, yeah.
And, obviously it's just one person's perspective. I might not be right. Maybe that was my experience. Maybe that's not who they are. Yeah. But it's useful, I think, to get that advice from other folks.
Well, it's funny. It's so cute because, investors have to do their due diligence on you. Do they not think we should be doing our due diligence on them?
Yeah.
Like, that's cute. But I'm going to do my due diligence too. So,
Exactly. Absolutely. Always do your due diligence on folks you're working with.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about just kind of the food space. This is an area where a lot of people, I think almost everybody, and maybe it's because we've all watched The Bear on Hulu.
And that's Chicago too. So
I know it's
even
Chicago.
For me to watch.
Exactly. We all think that we can be restaurateurs or be in the food business or things like that. Like, what advice would you give to somebody that's actually actively thinking about going into the food space, other than just don't do it and run away? Other than that, like, what advice would you give them?
So I can't speak, I can speak to the restaurant space because I have been in it. I've been a food writer for 15 years, like professional food writer. And my husband has run restaurants for his entire career. So I do have some thoughts on it, but I'll speak to the other side of the food business. Like, restaurant margins are terrifically tiny. I mean, bordering on non-existent, right? And some people think the same about CPG. And that can very well be the case. So I think you need to understand the unit economics. I don't like saying all these business school words, but like it's true. You really need to nail that down. And, at the beginning it was like, well, let's just get it out there. Like, I'm willing to spend money to get it out there and encourage trial and all this stuff. And that is okay too. There's different paths to take. That's the thing. There's no right or wrong way to do this. But I do think that nailing those unit economics, or at least having a path, to really good, strong margins, is so important right from the beginning, because it can sneak up on you. What I didn't realize in this business, in grocery, let's say, food and grocery, is how much investment you have to make in trade and promotions at the store level. They you go to Publix or you go to Whole Foods or Wegmans or wherever you go, and you're like, oh, it's buy one, get one, or BOGO or whatever. Oh, that's so nice of the grocery store to encourage us to sell this. No way. The brand takes that whole hit, right? So you have to be able to account for that, in your unit economics and all of, just in your whole business model, which was something that I had been advised of from the beginning, because I really did try to surround myself with really smart people who have done this, but you don't really get it until you're in it. So that's one thing, to be careful of. But yeah, nail those unit economics. Make sure you're staying true to the quality, right, of the brand that you want to put out into the world. Like, I would not make compromises on ingredients. It was like, no, you're using this tamarind. No, you're using this version of fish sauce. You can't skimp.
Okay, let's talk about kind of what your plans are. You've been doing this now for, well, you said a year, kind of in retail, year and a half. Do you have a vision of where this is going? Like, what has Globowl become? Is it new meals? Is it restaurant? Is it, retail expansion? Like, is this something that maybe you do buy at, like I just said that, and I'm like, maybe that's an idea. You buy this when you go to the restaurant, like you have a meal for you and a meal for the kiddo, right?
Yeah,
like,
I would love that. Yeah, I think there's a food service aspect to it. I think that's down the road. Phase 1 or 1.5 or whatever we're in now is really focused on retail and just, basically penetrating the natural and organic channel first. That's because that's what we are. We're an organic product. It's a premium price point. We look forward to getting that cost down, but it's still much more. It's the same price. If you think about it, 75% of people have more than one pouch at a time. And these pouches that are equivalent to ours in terms of organic and sold at the same stores, I mean, they can be $2.99, $3.99 a pouch, right? And every kid has more than one. Oh, well, 75%. So, and then some have more than that. So the natural channel, the premium channel, we really want to have mass sort of distribution there, then make our way into more of the conventional stores, the Publixes and the H-E-Bs and the big, the ones, Jewel
Yeah.
and all of that all over the country. But also like we really, we've built a brand. Like people are resonating with the brand itself, which is we want to introduce flavors from around the world to kids from the very beginning. And yes, we do all these wonderful health things, but we're also introducing them to culture, right? We're from the very beginning, we're getting them invested in other people, places, cultures. And I just think when kids are exposed, to diversity at such a young age, they just become bigger thinkers. They become more accepting people. They become more curious and tolerant. And so that's the mission. Like this is a very mission-driven brand. So I think that resonates, and we've really become a resource for a lot of parents too. Like they read our blog and we help them, we help introduce them to solids and, so really becoming somewhat of a feeding, community, for parents, about all things kind of feeding and food and, teaching kids how to get into the kitchen, or teaching parents how to get kids in the kitchen, I should say, tips and tricks on, how to introduce foods, like, really becoming a resource in that way too. But yes, of course, we're going to launch new flavors. We've already launched 2 new ones in the past year. So we started with 4, we have 6. So we'll be continuing to do that. This is not announced, but we are launching a product that has never been done before in baby. And we already have a brick and mortar retailer and an online retailer exclusively going to carry that. That'll be at the end of the year, maybe Q1 of next year. And then, we want to evolve with the life of the child, like I don't want to have a lifetime value customer of like, I don't know, 6 months or 12 months. So we need to evolve with the life of the child. Once we spend too much money and time trying to gain a customer, right? I don't want to lose them that fast. So we know that snacking is in the future for us. And then, we'll see from there.
Yeah. So you touched on something that I think is interesting, and let's pull this thread for a minute. You talked about mission-oriented business and how you are a mission-oriented business.
Very much so.
Talk to me about that, and how do you think about that, and how do you recommend other entrepreneurs that are running side hustles or small businesses to think about their mission as a part of their business?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't see why anyone would go into something without a mission. Right. This world of entrepreneurship or building a business from the ground up and raising money, like it's tough. And if you are just doing something because you want to see an ultimate acquisition or something at the end, to me, your customer knows that. I don't know. There's something inauthentic about it. So I just personally don't understand going into, like, even with the company that I was the first employee for, I believe deeply in the technology and how it was restaurateur friendly, right? And that it was giving restaurateurs the option or the opportunity to increase their margins, right? So like there's always something that should be behind it. And then, I just, in every single aspect of the brand, the colors, the design, the flavors, everything harkens back to our North Star of, is this celebrating diversity? Is this educating, this child? Is this introducing something, obviously healthy and new in an effort to, encourage this child to enjoy the wonders of the world, starting with food. And so everything harkens back to that for us. So I would say, if you're going to move in a mission-driven direction, that only do it if it's something you actually care about, right? Don't just like come up with a mission to say you're a mission-driven company. That people will know. People aren't dumb. You're not talking to dumb people. So, So I would just say, own it with your heart, like really believe in it and live it, right? Don't just do it for business. Like I live this mission. And also, because otherwise people see through it and it's inauthentic. So. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk really briefly about balance, because you're obviously the mom of a couple of kids. This is the reason why you started the business. How do you think about that? I mean, it's a hard business, as we've talked about, to do a food business, right? It's not just, like what I do all day long is typing on computers all day long, right? Like there's a lot more involved in this. How do you think about that in terms of balancing life and business and like all of the priorities that exist for you as an individual between family and friends and kids and everything else? How do you manage it? How do you think about it? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
I mean, it ain't easy, right? That is, I think we all know, man, woman, mom, dad, whatever. Like it's always going to be somewhat of a challenge, and I don't even know if that balance, actually exists. But what I would say is there are 2 things. One, I love that my kids see me working hard. Period. I want to instill the same work ethic that I have, that my parents instilled in me, in them. So I think it's super important for kids to, have a good example of what hard work looks like and passion, right? Like my kids live this mission too. They think it's crazy when like someone doesn't think like that, which is, I don't know, good or bad. But and then the other thing I would say is, I can't speak to the friend thing. I mean, I can, but more importantly, like my kids are still young. And so since day one, I have referred to this as our company. It is our business, right? They are part of it. It is not mommy's, it is ours. And so, my son has worked street festivals with me, like, 4 years ago when we were just kind of trying to get product market fit and talk to customers. He was there. I called my VP of sales. He comes with me to conferences. Like my daughter was a little young at the time. But by, I think, including them as part of it, there's, you're not creating a divide. It's not the business versus them. And so even at dinner time, they ask, did we get into any stores today? Or, they're very invested in it. So I think by incorporating it into your life instead of making it other, or that, your life with families here and your business is here, and they could, kind of go head to head sometimes.
Yeah.
I've incorporated it, but not to the point where it's like I'm always working. I mean, incorporated it so that there's familial sort of passion and ownership of it.
Yeah. I don't know if you realize this. I've realized this with my kids, is that by them seeing me as an entrepreneur, they basically feel like this is the only reasonable career path. I think I have ruined all the children for taking any other kind of career path at this point. So this is all my fault.
I know, I agree.
I don't know if you feel like that for you yourself.
I do.
As well, so.
I do sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, the hustle and the this. It's like, maybe they could do something more consistent or stable. But as of now, my son is 8. He's a black belt in karate and he wants to own a dojo one day. So so that is entrepreneurship, but also he has a huge passion for karate. So we'll see what all comes of it.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe he gets a movie deal and it's the next Karate Kid, and then you get a TV show after, which was fantastic.
It's his dream.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
That would be his dream.
Okay, I've got a last couple of questions for you here.
Please.
If you could go back in time and do anything differently, I think we talked about it a little bit ago, but talk about it kind of over the scope of everything that you've done since the very first startup, since 2014, all the years. Yeah. Is there anything that stands out to you? Like, oh yeah, this maybe not starting any of it at all and just taking a regular 8 to 5.
I would say, well, I've done that, but like not for very long periods of time. But it's not for me, honestly. I think I kind of, some of the mistakes I made that we talked about. I mean, like just always listening to your gut. Like if someone tells you that this is the way this business has to be run, no, it doesn't. I mean, everything, like, no, that's just not how this works. There's more than one way to skin a cat or peel a potato, whatever you want to say. And it's, I have to use a food reference, but
it's funny that you started with the cat and then you went
but I'm like, that doesn't even sound right. Why would I do that? I love animals too. So listening to the gut, knowing that you probably do know best for your business, or at least for what the outcome is that you want for your business or for your day-to-day happiness to look like, or your day-to-day productivity. And like I said, I would never do it again with someone else just because of my experience, but that's my thing. I think the question is very similar to sort of like the mistakes I've made that I wouldn't make again. But I wouldn't say not to do it at all. Like, I would say do it sooner rather than later, though. It was much scarier launching this than it was, like I said, in 2008, where I had nothing to lose. Right. So it's definitely something you should think long and hard about. And also, I would say, like, have stability of some sort before starting it. So, like, even if you're young, like, save a little money first, like, even if you're young, like, if you're in a relationship, like set the expectations from the beginning, because you're going to be working all the time. And your business deserves that. You deserve that. Your investors, if you have them, deserve that. So that just needs to be like set up in advance, like expectations with any relationship, friendship or otherwise. So, I guess that sort of in a roundabout way answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Erica, this has been fantastic. Where can our listeners find and connect with you online?
Oh, thank you. I'd be happy to have that happen. So my social handles are all at Erica Beth and at the Globowl. TikTok is Globowl Foodie. And then we're available on our website, Amazon.com and Thrive.com, and then in stores all over the country. Just check our store locator on the website.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast powered by Hiscox. To learn more about how Hiscox can help protect your small business through intelligent insurance solutions, visit hiscox.com. That's HISCOX.com. And if you have a story you want to hear on this podcast, please visit hiscox.com/share your story. I'm your host, Sanjay Parikh. You can find out more about me at my website, sanjayparikh.com.